Now they were sorting through the boxes she kept for the kids since they'd first put crayon to paper to articulate their souls. Only the more exceptional works were supposed to have made the cut. Drawings, poems, various certificates of excellence. The kids had made the choices themselves and named these archives their forever boxes. If Willow once had a notion of holding them to one large cardboard box apiece, that philosophy of restraint had gone the way of prohibition. Willow had a raft of her own boxes too, containing, among other things, a print copy of nearly every article she'd written or edited over the decades, clipped from the original publication. After she started working full-time for a magazine, it got simpler. She just saved every issue. Of course, she knew every word was archived electronically somewhere, and she could find it online if she really wanted to read an article about sailboat building she'd written 20 years ago, which she definitely did not. But giving up the physical record of all that work felt like a kind of death. Online wasn't enough. She wanted to weigh something. She'd set up each of them with a small keep box and trash bags for the rest. And now she watched her offspring dispassionately stuffing their entire past into the garbage bags. Almost nothing was getting kept. "You're not even looking," she accused. "What is that right there you're throwing away?" Tig held up a drawing, essentially a stick figure with arms and legs growing directly out of the egg-shaped head. The mouth leered, a half-circle smile. The eyes wore pupils, whooping curved lashes and astonished eyebrows. "Oh," Willow lamented, "your Humpty Dumpty phase. I loved those drawings. The child psychologist friend of ours said they were way ahead of normal development for your age. They count IQ by the number of body parts a 3-year-old includes in a drawing, and you put in everything." Tig aimed the drawing at her brother. "Hey, Harvard, looky here. Genius." Then she stuffed it in the bag. "You're not even saving one?" "No, I don't have room for crap like this." "What are you going to do with all that stuff you're keeping, Mom?" "Just don't worry about it. I'm archiving it." Willa carried on with her hoarding. She still had boxes she'd brought from her mother's house when they emptied it out and never took time to look through before now. She was finding the predictable yellow clippings, recipes, advice columns with tips on stain removal. Only many files of family trees, results of a genealogy hobby Darcy and Driama shared, which had kept the twin sisters connected and interest-savvy into their 70s. Willa had never taken much interest. Now they saw they'd found relatives in the region, not in Vineland but nearby. She vaguely recalled they had family in Pennsylvania drawn from north from the West Virginia via the so-called Hillbilly Highway into the Steel Belt after the war. That family history suddenly seemed like something she ought to hold on to. The craving was not letting up anything. In her mother's handwriting she saved. Willa wanted her also to go on weighing something in the world. The kids were ruthless. Another one for the archive. They began to taunt in unison, while throwing their own things away faster than they could look at them. Zeke had a head start. Since most of this latter year's cachet had been lost to water damage back last winter, he'd been angry at the time, but now seemed more than ready to let it all go. The balm of the new life, Willa thought. Priya sounded like it might be Sanskrit for darling. Forget about your messed up family. Once he had lunch down the hatch. Dusty needed more entertainment to keep him from climbing out of his chair and taking a basket of toys at the ready. He examined each article she handed him for an unpredictable number of seconds before throwing it on the floor. The toys were mostly combinations of household things, a wooden spoon and spatula connected with a big rubber band, 2 pot holders pinched together with a hair clip. Dusty went straight to the connectors and tried to work out how to pull things apart, just as he was drawn to cabinet latches. Now that he was cruising, he expressed a powerful bent to get at the world and deconstruct. The pot holders hit the floor, and Tig gave him a big plastic vitamin bottle emptied of vitamins and partly filled with pea gravel. Dusty shook it, widened his eyes at the large noise, and looked around to make sure everyone was clear about authorship. "Nice," Zig observed, "a redneck rattle." "Excuse me, it's not an Oxycontin bottle." "Okay, stop," Willis said, not at their argument, but the artifact Tig was about to throw away, a child-manufactured book with a red construction paper binding held together by acorn brads. What is that? Tig held it up so Willa could read the handwritten title, Club of Worlds. It was a stupid thing we'd do. Take turns making up a world. When it was your day, you were the president, and everybody else had to agree with your world. Zeke took the book from her and read aloud November 6, 1999. Today's president, Ansi Tavaloros. World of today is Tree World. The citizens, it's spelled citizens, are turtles, frogs, and bugs. Trees are king. Nothing is allowed to get killed. Oh my God, Tig erupted. Deleuze, Cameron. Remember how she got all up about the snakes? She said if there were snakes, you would have to kill them. I told her it was my day and she couldn't kill the snakes. Yeah, you just thought it was okay to kill her. We kicked her out, Tig explained to Willa. Not that day, but later. She was so boring. Every single time it was her turn, she'd make Walmart World. Told her that wasn't a club world, that there already was a Walmart and you could just fucking go there. Willa understood this was probably an exact quote. Her thing was in her Walmart. You'd buy whatever you wanted without money. Are you saying Deleuze? Willa asked. That can't be a real name. It was D. Louise. Zeke, the big meanie, came up with Deleuze. I was a meanie. You pulled out a big old hunk of her hair. Okay, but she had like 100 pounds on me, and she started it. The girl was a douche. I mean, will you please? Walmart World? Dusty threw the vitamin bottle rattle on the floor to spectacular effect. Why don't I remember this girl? Willa asked. Where was I? It was in CC Club, that after school club at school, which we so knew was a ripoff, Mom. It meant we got to spend 2 extra hours at school with all the other kids whose parents had 9-to-5 jobs. You poor things. Tig reached down to pick up the rattle and handed back to Dusty. We never even knew what CC stood for. Mom, you called it the Continuous Crap Club. Sorry. You did bring home a lot of, let's call it handiwork, and you never wanted me to throw anything away. She raised her eyebrows at them. Come to think of it, Deleuze wasn't in CC Club, Zeke said. That was the first year we got to be latchkeys. You were in 3rd, I was in 6th. She always came over even though their mom was a stay-at-home. She just wanted to get rid of them. Tig squinched her face, trying to remember. Are you sure about that? Yes. They lived down the street. Her little brother was the mousetrap. Oh God, yes, the mousetrap. Willa felt much as she did when trying to follow a conversation in Spanish or French. Why would they be at our house unsupervised when their mother was at home? Sometimes we went over there, but it was more fun in our house, obvi. Deleuze was 14 or something. Zeke explained. Technically, she was supposed to be babysitting us, but after we kicked her out of the club, she got all pissy and never came back. But we let the mousetrap stay. He was so weird, Mom. He hid in cabinets. He would go into like one of the kitchen cabinets. He'd move the pans around so he'd get this whole body in there, and then he wouldn't come out for 2 or 3 hours. Seriously. Zeke confirmed. I think he was trained. The Camerons were some kind of survivalists. Why didn't I know you were playing with the children of survivalists? Did they have firearms? The look between Tig and Zeke suggested firearms weren't the half of it. Amazingly, you survived. Willa took the book from Zeke and paged through it. She found considerable repetition of something called Chess World. What's this? That was Zeke. It was almost as boring as Queen Walmart. So in your world, people were chess pieces. Willa recalled a serious chess period. He was president of the school club, went to state meets, whole phases of her children's lives. These passions that had seemed to be their purest marrow had faded away one after another, and character persisted. Kind of like that. Zeke evaded. It was complicated. On his days, you had to play chess, Tig clarified, and whoever won got to be King Bossyface. That sounds reasonable. A meritocracy? No, Tig corrected, because Zeke always won. We probably played 5,000 games of chess and he won every single time. See, what I finally figured out was that he taught me how to play, and I think he held back on some of the rules. He'd just whip out some exceptional new move whenever he needed it to win. Absolutely false. Okay, I'm keeping this. Will said. She archived the Club of Worlds. With the forever boxes conquered, they moved on to a pile of things they still had to decide about. Mostly valueless, the prickly pear cactus twig made of cardboard and toothpicks for a science fair to demonstrate adaptation to the arid environment. This had survived 4 moves. Dorm room posters that no one needed to pull out of their cardboard cylinders. Willa trashed an armload of these with a prideful flourish, then retrieved one because it felt suspiciously heavy. She picked the tape off the end and pulled out a Navajo rug. Whoa. Both kids said when she rolled it out on the table, wow. She agreed, I haven't thought about this for as long as you two have been alive. If I'd accidentally thrown it away, I never would have missed it. You spent the whole afternoon saving crap, Zeke observed, and then tried to throw away a couple of $1,000, probably more, she had to concede. You know what these are worth now. Where'd you get it? It sounds crazy, but it was no big deal at the time. One of our trips through Navajo had land when Dad and I were in college, driving from Colorado to Phoenix to see his folks. I guess Navajo weaving was undiscovered, or we just happened to be at the right place. I guarantee you we couldn't even have paid $100 for it. Teig ran her fingers over the lines of color, vivid dark reds and cloudy grays, reading the craftsmanship in a way Willa couldn't. It's really beautiful, Teig said. I think we intended it as a Christmas present and then decided to hang on to it ourselves. And then I guess we thought it was too nice to use. You could sell it, Zeke said, or does that make me the enemy of the people? Willa looked from one to the other. I don't know. It's been in the family a long time. Do you want it, either of you? They both shook their heads. I agree. It's nice. It's too nice to use. Tig said, I mean, it shouldn't go on the floor. And we don't have any space to hang it on the wall. You should take it, Mom, for your new place. We have even less wall space than you do, and I'm not going to walk on this. Zeke said nothing. Willa couldn't help thinking of Helene's designer taste and the fact that he was about to move once again into a woman's life about whom Willa knew nothing, except that her son didn't go for arts and crafts types. Well, this is a conundrum, she said. A museum-quality piece, but it's so valuable nobody wants to take it. Teig laughed. Give it to your pal Chris for his museum. He'll take anything. Ha ha! Willa was used to defending Christopher, whose xeric charm was lost on her family, putting it mildly. But it was a thought. He might know a collector who'd pay top dollar. Willa had gotten to the one last shoebox of her mother's things, which looked safe to pitch out. Recipes copied in her mother's handwriting. She thumbed through them, remembering her mother in a steamy kitchen with hair plastered to her temples, canning and pickling things by mystical means. Willa had refused to learn. Maybe Tig would want some of these recipes. Zucchini relish. She read aloud, okra dilly. Then she stopped, read silently, put her hand over her mouth, and burst into tears. Mom, what is it? Tig gently took the scrap of paper from Willa and read aloud. It was something that lay under the sun and felt it, like the pumpkins, and I did not want to be anything more. I was entirely happy. Perhaps we feel like when we die and become a part of something entire, whether it is sun and air or goodness and knowledge, at any rate that is happiness, to be dissolved into something complete and great. When it comes to one, it comes as naturally as sleep. Both kids stared at Willa. They looked so alike. It's from my Antonia, by Willa Cather. My mama's favorite book. It's okay. Tig handed it back. You should keep this. No, it's not okay. She wanted me to read this at her funeral, and I didn't. It was a nice funeral, Mom. Zeke said, you just forgot. I forgot. She gave this to me, I don't know, 10 years before she died. I didn't want to think about her funeral, so I stuck it in a box, and I completely and absolutely forgot. It's one of the only things she ever asked me to do for her, and I didn't do it. This grief ran so deep, Willa could hardly name it. Not just for her mother's loss or the funeral that wasn't perfect. She'd failed to keep order. You had too much else on your mind, Mom. No. Willa wiped her face with the back of her hand. It was here in this box, with these completely unrelated things that weren't important to me, inside other boxes of completely unrelated things. I had too many things. Just too much goddamn stuff. They sorted in silence a while, clearing the table for good and all. Watch out there, buddy, Zeke suddenly said in Dusty's direction. Dusty had managed to get the cap off the plastic bottle remarkably, and now had the look of a boy contraband in his mouth. Good thing it wasn't an Oxycontin bottle, Zeke said, while Tig scooped him out of the high chair and had him on her lap in a flash. She expertly dug a finger into his mouth and produced a couple of wet black lumps. Nope, here you go. She crooned gently, shh, give those to Mama. The rock eater wasn't pleased to give up his ache. Willa watched him screw up his face in a tantrum, and it took her a moment to register that Zeke was staring at his sister as if she slapped him. He turned to Willa looking bewildered, a confusion salted with wariness or anger. Mom, he's going with you to Philadelphia, right? Tig sat perfectly still with Dusty in her arms, looking at no one. The mama had been a slip, natural and unintentional. Tig slid her eyes to meet Willa's. The look could have torn her heart from her chest if Willa hadn't been prepared. No, Zeke. Dusty's staying here with Tig. He said nothing for a long moment. Then he got up and left the dining room, and a minute later, the house. They heard his car start in the driveway, heard it pull out, and that, too, could have knocked a mother down if she hadn't been braced for it. It took forever for either of them to speak. The hard thing with Zeke, Tig finally said, is he is always to win. You're right, and also to be sure he's doing the right thing. For Dusty, in this case, I'll call him later. You'll have to trust me to handle this. I can walk him through it. Tig shook her head. He would have to figure out how to see it at his win. I think he will, because it is. Willa studied the wide-eyed face of this child who expected nothing and mostly got it. She had no use for anything Willa ever tried to give her, it seemed. But maybe this. Sometimes the right thing isn't a thing but a person. And that's me. And that's you. Willa bumped down the sidewalk, feeling like a tourist of the laughing-stock class, pulling 2 rolling suitcases, huge and huger, with extra items attached on top with bungee cords. Here was the flotsam of a family, everything too precious or too worthless to sell on eBay. She turned south from Landis onto 7th, glad to get away from traffic that was sparse at this hour but loaded with empty passenger seats. Ever since the Yellow Guy revelations, that troublesome confederacy of ghost riders had been visible to Willa. She'd given Christopher a heads up on the impending donation, but hadn't told him about the Navajo rug as a strategic choice. She was trying to unload one weird batch of stuff here, without much to sweeten the pots. She hadn't been in the door a minute before she unrolled the rug. 2 gray hills, he fondled the texture with frank approval. Willa, this is worth a mint. You have to keep it. I can't. Our apartment in Philly is microscopic. Believe me, I thought about it. But we won't have any place to hang it, and it's too good to use on the floor. Oh, definitely. We'll display it on a wall here, in the main room. However did you get your hands on a piece like this? Kind of by dumb accident. We were paupers at the time. We got it for a song. Well, it's worth the whole opera now. But it doesn't exactly belong here, does it? A rug from Navajo land. Willa was being coy. This museum had relics aplenty from the Western Territories, notably a velvet upholstered chair made of Texas cow horns. What did not belong here? The antique silver services, the cameo collection laid out on a swath of velvet, the arcane photos and personal papers hanging out upstairs with Charles Darwin and all vestiges of a citizenry who called this place home. Chris Hawk, in his tailcoat, neatly trimmed beard, was president of the club. It would always be Vineland World. He hefted everything onto a table under one of the portraits of the founder and started unpacking. Willa tried not to cringe as Chris carefully lifted on stacked papers, sorting through the mess. We've got some genealogical documents there, she offered, a record of the Appalachian diaspora after World War II. My family was part of that. Unfortunately, it was sandwiched between children's drawings, the complete works of Willa Knox, and words from a novel that had allowed her mother to die in peace. Lost for a long interlude in a box of recipes, Willa's lifelong service to the duty of proper order now seemed like an idiot's game. School papers and photos had been labeled by year each, her own articles filed away from research attached, and in the end she'd pitched everything into a couple of suitcases like an evacuee from a wrecked cruise ship. Somewhere down the line this will be useful to somebody, he reassured her. After you break out with a biography, there will be interest in your earlier work. Was Christopher cracking this first joke? She watched him tuck his white hair behind his ears and lean over the suitcase like a pirate surveying the booty. I'm just sorry for the mess, she told him. But in this place of flotsam far in excess of her own, she was starting to feel a whole lot less embarrassed. I tried to keep things in categories, but we're on deadline. With the house coming down, at the last minute it got chaotic. Oh, it's fine. Chaos gets me out of bed in the morning. I'll get it all cataloged and labeled. Your name will be attached to everything. A family in memoriam. You're still alive, most of you. You'll be coming back to Vineland often, I assume. Probably every other day. I have to see the little boy, and I've got 1,000,000 hours of research to do in here. The pricey rug was her down payment on Christopher's future services, and his willingness to cede some territory. Already he'd happened on a surprising Mary Treat lead from a historical society in Jacksonville, Florida, and turned it over to Willa without delay. She was counting on no reversal of fortunes with the book she'd confessed to be writing, but it was getting her out of bed in the mornings, and not exactly a biography either, but something breaking into her thoughts as a string of intimate conversations in a light-filled parlor, in a classroom smelling of chalk and ammonia, in a forest clearing where a heron stalked the banks of a blood-red creek. Words luring her across an unexpected bridge at the end of the world she knew. She needed to be still, to listen and be taken. The prospect of living apart from Dusty had opened a physical grief that shocked her, but it was ebbing behind Willa's itch for time and solitude. In a zero-sum apartment, she was trading crib space for desk space. Greenwood Treat correspondence existed somewhere. She knew this in her bones, and she would be the one to find it. Taking custody of these other lives felt as large in its demands as birthing a child, holding other eyes inside her line of sight. Other futures and risks would mean making something new, even if new was impossible, because they were all made of just one set of molecules. Possible or not, she'd have room to find out, having jettisoned the nonsense Chris was busy appraising. If you need to sell that rug as a fundraiser, that's fine. Donation is a donation. Don't feel obligated to expand your collection into the Western Territories. Oh! Stood upright and focused his eyes on Willa with a hint of dazzle. I have something new to show you. He disappeared into his office. Willa watched dust motes track the banks of light coming in through the tall windows. The Landis portrait glared down at her. Desperate eyes, snowy beard. This would be an after in the Dorian Gray-like series. His hair and beard were said to have turned white in a single year after he murdered one of his public critics and got away with it. Tricky, the getting away with it. Chris returned and handed over a large postal envelope. Very old, addressed to Mary Treat, not on Plum but Park Avenue, with no hint of a return address beyond an elaborate postmark made in Provo, Utah. Willa emptied its contents onto the table and felt anxious for the brittle state of the pages that fell out. Pencil sketches. She fanned them out with her fingertips and studied what appeared to be a series of botanical illustrations, all drawn by the same hand and classified. Sago lily, Calacrotis nutili, goldenrod, solidago, elingata, saltbush, obion, trucate. Willa felt an ardent need for something more personal here than Latin names, but found only minimal notations. The milk vetch, astragalus, Eodanthus, offered the small note. Appears to thrive in hostile conditions. The most interesting of the drawings was unlabeled, but obviously a giant redwood tree drawn in detail from its broad, burled trunk to its narrowing upper branches. Willa felt she shouldn't touch anything, but did anyway, turning over the redwood portrait to find a tantalizing inscription on the back, not quite verse. Unsheltered. I live in daylight. Like the wandering bird, I rest in thee. Who did she know in Provo, Utah? No idea. Chris was pleased with her agitation, she could tell. He turned back to poking through the entrails of her family history. Send you a receipt for your donation, he promised. When I've gone through everything and can attach a dollar amount, the Tavalaris Knox collection will be a nice addition. Okay, but I really should apologize for bringing it to you like this. Should, but couldn't. Under the gaze of the old man mad on the wall in this kingdom of dust motes, she felt unapologetic. It's the state of the union at our house. We're a shambles. Willa walked home, toting her 2 empty suitcases with ease, one inside the other. From the corner of 6th and Plum, she spotted Tig and a half-dozen teenage girls sitting cross-legged in a semicircle on the grass in front of the carriage house, all watching Dusty, naked as an old-time circus strongman, wearing nothing but his bulky diaper. He was working hard on a solo stand-up. Willa stopped to watch from the sidewalk with her luggage in hand, like some homeless lady, because she didn't want to intrude and break his concentration. This act took everything he had. First raising himself buttoned up with fingers and toes gripping the grass, then letting go and lifting his arms, slowly bringing himself upright. When the girls applauded, he beamed at them. That small distraction cost him. He felt down on his padded bottom. But he went right back to it, trying again. He would do this over and over until he had it, and today or tomorrow he would walk. Willie remembered all this. She'd watched her kids master these first small tests with an application of effort that seemed superhuman, but of course it only amounted to being human. A story written in genes. First they would stagger, then grow competent, then forget the difficulty altogether while thinking of other things, and that was survival.